On this special episode of the Power to You podcast, Rachel and I caught up with Cherie Vinoy, a master practice specialist with Practice Without Pressure.
Hi, my name is Cherie Vinoy. I am a master practice specialist with Power to Mark at Practice Without Pressure. I met Deb as she was a neighbor of mine, just a couple doors down, and we immediately connected with Mark, had a great connection. We both have a love of dogs, and so that's initially how our conversation started. But through that, the compassion of connecting with people really has blossomed and was apparent. Moving on, Deb talked to me about this PWP process and the philosophy, and I just thought that was fantastic. I understood it, and it made total sense. So I come from a social work background, and seeing it in this process of connecting with people, it was just, it clicked, and we've moved forward. And Power to Mark has grown so much over the last 2 years, and Practice Without Pressure. And people are starting to realize that there's a different way of doing things out there, a way that takes the tension and stress off of not just the caregivers, but off also the individuals.
Right.
And in that process, the pressure is also relieved from the professional, the medical providers that are working with the individuals, because they see that this doesn't have to be a restraint, sedation environment. The individuals are individuals, and everyone's able to learn, and everyone's different. So it's just very exciting to make that connection with each and every one individually.
It is really beautiful to see how it's gotten people more individualized care versus being seen as a number.
Yes. Yep. And having the caregivers see that when given the opportunity, their loved ones connect with others, like as I'm working with them, they connect with me. And caregivers, I've had them say to me, wow, I can't believe that, he let you do that, or you got that close to him in just a brief meeting. And so that really opens up their eyes. They start to realize that there's hope, that the amount of stress that goes on in medical situation, it starts from just knowing that appointment is scheduled. And their loved one knows that it's scheduled, and they start talking about it. That tension just builds upon itself, and knowing that doesn't have to be there, that being able to have the individual express in their own way what their understanding is and what they need for themselves to be able to get to the appointment or through the appointment. It's awesome.
That's a beautiful
It's
thing.
awesome.
Cherie, what changes have you seen in the lives of individuals with disabilities, their families, or their caregivers, thanks to Practice Without Pressure?
Their hope and their outlook of how appointments are going to be going, how they can go, it totally changes.
Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of Power to Mark now that the initiative is gaining momentum?
Looking ahead, what excites me the most about Power to Mark, Practice Without Pressure, I am very excited about being able to see the connection between the caregivers, individuals, and working with the professionals. And because all of them together, and they can make such a change. That very excited about that connection. Difficulties moving forward that I see are having the caregivers advocate for the individual, or having the individuals advocate for themselves with medical professionals and not feeling pressured. And as they're going into an appointment, they know what works for them, and from going through the PWP process. And so I'm anticipating that as this continues to develop, the medical professionals will start to get such a better understanding of how we're all working together. And so that'll ease up. But I think that moving forward, that can be that'll be difficult, because it's caregivers talking to professionals, and they feel very intimidated.
Sure.
And empowering the caregiver and individual that they can stand up for themselves.
Changing
they can talk.
that expectation.
Exactly.
If you could offer one piece of advice to a parent or caregiver struggling with daily tasks for a loved one with disabilities, what would you share?
Learn the PWP process, because that changes everything. You can apply the PWP process to so many different things, because it's a connection and learning how the individual can move forward and build their skills. Daily tasks don't need to be stressful. They don't need to be a burden, and the process can remove that.
What has been the most surprising or unexpected impact of Practice Without Pressure in the past year?
The number of individuals, caregivers coming forward and being able to sigh and go, there is hope. The amount of individuals that are starting to see that, and the caregivers,
Right.
Yeah, that has really surprised me. I know that the interest is out there, the desire, the need is out there.
Yeah.
But actually having caregivers come forward and saying, we can do this.
That's beautiful.
There's a point where they have to feel like they've been written off, the individual and where it's they cannot learn this, they cannot be better than they are, and being able to challenge that is amazing. I mean, we talk about it all the time when we explain what somebody goes through, what Mark went through.
Yep.
And they're like, oh my, that's horrible. And I think most people don't know. I didn't know.
The fact that people are willing to come forward and say, too, this is something that I've experienced or that I've done, because for a lot of caregivers especially, it can be something that they feel shameful about or they feel bad about. And so the fact that they are willing to put that aside and push themselves to pass that, to be able to take care of their loved one, that's a really brave and beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a shame that there's been they feel like they're at the very bottom, and there is no way. And the hope that they start feeling when they see this in action, when they see how far Mark has come, and see other individuals that have gone through this, and what they do. It's so empowering. Difficulty that I see, what I would share with caregivers about starting this process, it's a commitment, and it may seem long and drawn out as they're starting to learn it, but once they learn it, everything is going to change.
And they really dedicate themselves to it, their physical energy, but also their emotional energy.
Yes, absolutely. And communication is not just the words, it's people's body language. It's how, whether you're sitting forward or your arms are crossed or slumped over, individuals react to that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so they know whether you're connected, whether you're really there supporting, or is it
Performative. Yeah.
Can you share a specific moment or story that exemplifies how Practice Without Pressure has transformed someone's life?
I worked with an individual that came in on a stretcher to a dental appointment.
Wow.
And was only able to, she communicated by moving her head slightly back and forth, very expressive with her eyes. Not so much her eyebrows or anything, but her eyes, the intensity that she looked at you. And working with through the process and with a professional, the professional started to see her eye movements, and she was able to back up when needed, when the individual needed a break. So that working with that individual and being able to have the professional learn how that individual was communicating and respond appropriately and give her the break when she needed or stop, or
That's huge.
that was, something so small was so important and powerful.
Absolutely.
And they had to have felt like starting over, but the tools were there. And so it's a whole new language, but it's the same language. And it's the patience. It's the listening to nonverbal cues, to, assessing that body language that can often be a negative communicator or is communicating the anxiety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did it go?
It went well. It
What was the thing that you guys were working on together? For dentistry, you said?
Yes. Yep. For dental appointment, being able to have an exam done, and giving her the time to respond by relaxing her mouth muscles, so she could. So and it wasn't. Nothing was forced because the individual was given the time she needed to hear the question or hear what needed to be done and work through it.
Did you see a difference in her and how she was responding to people by the end of your time working together?
She was, I don't really know how to answer that one.
So I guess my question would be, for example, versus how she started in the beginning, was it just people constantly just kind of open her mouth for her? Did you see a change in her comfort level, her mannerisms, the way that she felt comfortable enough to communicate?
When she first came in, she was crying, knowing what, she's here for dental and we're working on that. At the end of the appointment, after our process working through, she wasn't crying.
I can't even
so
imagine.
What a
just
huge
going,
relief.
Yeah.
Yep.
Knowing that, she has so much to say. It's just, she can't say it in a way that typically we would. And so to be able to have the ability to communicate and have people actually listen, that's a huge...
And the whole process of her getting into the building from her residence, in a vehicle, being transported on the stretcher, all of that is very draining.
Absolutely.
And so certainly when she
can't
first
say
started
the straps
coming
are
in,
too tight, you can't say nothing. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. But you could see
Bless her heart.
the spark, the shine in her eye when she would come in and we connected, and you could
somebody
see that.
was listening to her finally. She's trying to say something all this
Yeah.
time with her eyes, and somebody's finally listening to her.
Yes.
Her wants were not written off. Wow.
That's huge.
Has practice without pressure changed the way medical professionals or caregivers approach their work?
PWP changes the approach that professionals and caregivers approach their work by being more aware and in tune with the person that they're working with,
Yeah.
and gathering that form of communication and making that connection.
What would you say to someone who is considering signing up for Practice Without Pressure?
For someone who's considering signing up for PWP, I would say know that it is a commitment, but following that process, the reward is so overwhelming. That reward that they get of being able to have their individual learn and build the skills and be able to do a medical appointment that has been a struggle before.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing people with disabilities going into 2025?
Building the capacity to advocate for themselves, for the caregivers, advocate for the individuals with medical professionals. Until that gap has been made smaller.
Yeah.
But as more and more people learn about PWP and the process and how it works, educating everybody that way, that's going to close the gap, and the medical access to medical care is going to greatly open.
Well, we hear that from, I think, like with Becky's story, where she has had so much great success with specific medical professionals and then no support with other medical professionals. And so I think we almost take for granted the success stories and forget that you will start sometimes at -1 with somebody because they've been kicked or they've been hit or something bad has happened when working with somebody with Down syndrome or autism or whatever it might be. And so, being able to clear the air and show the success stories, I think goes a long way. But some people, you really are starting at a huge disadvantage. And I would say most medical professionals, you're probably starting out at a disadvantage until you kind of show them what can be done.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. But times are changing. People are becoming more aware of doing things a different way.
Yeah.
And so I have no doubt that very quickly, more and more people are going to shift to this way of interacting with individuals.
Yeah.
And you'll see so many changes. So I'm very excited about that. It's coming.
How do you see Practice Without Pressure helping to create a paradigm shift in how care is provided to individuals with disabilities?
All the negative experiences that one has gone through, and so we're shifting into a positive, more changing the script of how individuals are able to build the capacity and response and get through the appointments. As more and more families and medical providers become aware of this, they're going to start at a younger age. So that's going to remove, there won't be so many negative experiences. So many traumatic experiences that individuals have being held down right from the get-go. There's that other way of doing it. So they won't even have to go through all that.
I mean, look at Sam versus Becky, and we'll talk about that in a little bit with Becky. But I mean, her son was 30 years old and restrained for blood draw up until 30 years old. Luna, on the other hand, will never experience that, and she's 6. So the difference in their lives is really impactful.
Helping them empower and feel empowered, being able to be themselves, but be able to get through their appointments without that restraint. They don't have all the negative experiences. That I have seen Mark grow so much in the last year, and he's his own individual because he's allowed to be, and the growth that I've seen is amazing.
If someone asked you to summarize the mission and impact of Practice Without Pressure in just 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say?
Really amplifying the voices for these individuals that haven't been given an opportunity to before.
No, that's great. And let me say while we're here, thank you for being the first master practice specialist.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And the frequency in which you're in a position to help elevate that voice for people.
Yes.
It's got to feel like the best calling in the world.
My heart is overwhelmed with the number of individuals that I'm able to touch and connect and share, helping other practice specialists learn and grow so that more and more people can be seen as who they are and be themselves.
Thank you for joining us for this special episode of the Power to You podcast.